next section is going to be on listing contracts. This is our employment agreement. A listing contract is an agreement between the real estate brokerage and a seller of a property, typically speaking. Listing agreements are non-transferable because they are an employment agreement. And what I want you to remember is that anytime that we are dealing with a seller and we enter into a listing contract, a copy of that listing contract has to be delivered back to the seller within 24 hours of its execution. Now, in a listing appointment, there are a number of documents that you might want to try to get from that seller. I suggest that one of the documents that you get is a copy of the title insurance policy. And let me tell you why that policy is important to you. It has 3 things on it that you're going to need. It's going to have the names of the owners of the property. It's going to have a full and complete legal description. But more importantly, or as importantly, it's going to have a list of exceptions to title. In other words, those are things that are non-insurable for title insurance purposes. So those are some things that you need to get. Also, if you can get a survey, that'd be great. You need to get the mortgage payoff. So there are other documents that you're going to have to get. Let's talk about the 3 types of listing contracts. First of all, there is the open listing. The open listing is probably the least preferred, and all it simply says is that, Broker David, I'm going to list my property with you, but I also reserve the right to list it with other brokers, and by the way, I also reserve the right to sell it myself. The only way that you're going to get paid is if you sell it. The exclusive agency is a little bit better, and that's where the seller says, Broker David, I'm going to list the property with you exclusively and no other brokers, but I'm going to reserve the right to sell it myself without owing you a commission. The listing agreement that we believe is the best for us is going to be the exclusive right of sale listing contract. And in the exclusive right of sale listing contract, the seller says, Broker David, I'm going to list the property with you exclusively. And no matter who sells the property during the listing period, you will be paid. The net listing, on the other hand, is a very unique type of listing that most brokers don't even get involved with. The net listing is where we promise to net the seller a certain amount of money at closing. Well, you need to be careful with that one, because if you don't get enough price offered, you may end up with a problem. And one thing that you can't do is that you can't sell it for more than a price that you could collect a normal commission. In other words, the real estate commission will not allow you to collect above that net more than you would have normally collected under a normal commission circumstance. So you can't gouge your clients, what we're trying to say. And on page 3-4, there's an example of a calculation of a net listing that you're probably going to have to do. Just remember that whatever that net is that the seller wants, there's another number of higher value that you're trying to get to, and it's going to be a division problem. As far as the elements of a well-written listing contract, you're going to have the parties to the contract, dates, legal description. There's going to be a number of things within the text of that listing agreement that's going to be important. One of the things is compensation, obviously, and cooperation with other brokers. And what that will basically spell out is how much I'm going to be willing to pay other brokers. And make sure that you pay other brokers an equal amount. Don't discriminate single agent from transaction broker from the no brokerage relationship, because they all play a role. As far as dispute resolution, there's also going to be something in there that says that if for whatever reason the seller of the property and the broker gets into a dispute about it, that there's resolution for it. Property inspection, you're going to be out. Good thing to do is you need to take a thorough view of the property, make sure that it's in good condition. If you see some areas that probably need repairs, you need to let the seller know about it. Remember, there's probably going to be a home inspection done. I'm a little leery of home inspectors. A lot of your home inspectors know just enough to be a little dangerous. They make comments that may or may not be true. What we want to do is try to avoid problems with home inspectors if at all possible. I've always said that for every dollar that you spend for paint, you're going to get back $5 in value. And for every dollar that you spend on landscaping, you're going to get back about $3 in value. So go through the property and see if you can help the seller do some repairs, do some things to make it sellable. Also, I want you to be careful about measuring a house. We do have some legal liability when we go out and measure a house. It can be done, But sometimes the safest bet is to use an appraisal. The appraiser goes out and does. They may go out and measure it. Also, if it's a new construction, you've got the contractor or the builder's specs on it. They've measured it. Probably one of the places that you want to stay away from is the tax assessor's office. They'll even have a little caveat on their website that says this information may not be correct. So try to stay away from that. When you're evaluating a property on a listing appointment, you're going to do a CMA, a comparative market analysis. And let me tell you what that CMA is all about. You're going to go out and you're going to look at properties that have sold recently that are similar, properties that are currently on the market that are similar to your property, and also expired listings. And that's going to give you a good round view about what your property should be listed for. One of the things that's going to be important about the CMA is just remember that once you've done it, that you've got to reconcile it, you've got to come up with some kind of average. We're going to have a value range, is what we call it. You'll have a low side and a high side in terms of what you think the property's worth. Another important aspect about a listing appointment is a seller's net sheet. And I've always told people that don't sell the sales price, sell the net. The net is the most important thing to sellers. And all the seller net sheet's going to do is going to line up, it's going to take the sales price minus all of their expenses, including the mortgage payment, dock stamps, prorations of taxes, maybe prorations of rent. So there's going to be a lot of things that we subtract out. We're trying to get to the bottom line. How much are you going to take home at closing? So if you can try to sell the net, you're probably going to be more successful at selling properties. On page 3-11 is an example of a seller's net sheet. I want you to look over that and all those calculations, because I'm pretty sure you're going to see one of those on the examination a little later on. And you can see on page 3-12 what that actually looks like. As far as termination of employment, once again, on a listing contract, what we want to do is perform. We want to be able to sell that property at the price that we believe that it's worth. Also, let me make a comment about sellers canceling listing contracts. There's a cancellation clause in every listing contract. If you're going to allow the seller to cancel, you need to put an amount in there. There's got to be a consequence to them wanting out of a contract. Just remember that you're going to put a lot of time and energy into that listing, and for them to have the ability at no expense to walk away simply isn't fair to you or your broker. And I think that's about all that we have to talk about in this listing contract section. So what I'd like to do right now is I'd like to go over some of the important items with you. A fully executed listing agreement must be delivered to the seller within 24 hours of its execution. A title insurance policy will provide an agent with the owner's name, legal address, and any exceptions to title. An open listing, the broker only gets paid if they're the one that secures the buyer. The exclusive listing, the seller reserves the right to sell it themselves without owing a commission. The exclusive right to sell listing contract, the broker's going to get paid no matter who sells the property. A net listing guarantees the seller of a net amount at closing. Brokers cannot gouge sellers on the commission. Remember, we can't receive any more than we would normally receive as a commission on a normal transaction. In performing a CMA, only adjust the comparable property. Remember Robin Hood. If the comparable is better than, you take away. If the comparable is inferior, you add to. Take from the rich, give to the poor. The seller's net sheet is an important part of the selling process. You have your sales price minus a mortgage and all other closing costs to give the seller his net at closing. And that's all we're going to have for that section.